Okay, so it's 7:30, so I'm going to start the presentation, the official presentation. So good evening, everyone. Bonsoir à tous et à toutes, and welcome to tonight's presentation of OTF Connects on sketchnoting with Tina Zita. We have actually a nice group tonight. In the last few weeks, attendance has been a bit low. I suspect that many teachers were feeling the winter blues, and particularly after such a cold and long winter, but it looks like we are in for better days, and thankfully it looks like registration is picking up. So and tonight we actually have a good number, so that's great. Je voudrais profiter de l'occasion pour souhaiter la bienvenue à nos collègues franco-ontariens. Cette session est en anglais, mais si vous désirez obtenir des informations en français, surtout n'hésitez pas à nous contacter par la suite. We are definitely thrilled to have each and every one of you with us tonight. It's also an absolute pleasure to welcome Tina Zita. Tina is a Toronto-based teacher. She's passionate about design and about photography and very active on social media. She started blogging in 2013, and over the last 5 years she has posted lots of extremely interesting articles on her blog, many on teacher leadership or learning strategies and things like that. I encourage you to visit her blog called Miss Kit Kat, and Tina will definitely want to tell us more about the origin of this name. I suspect that it's spreads due to chocolate addiction, which I would totally understand since I'm myself from Belgium. And as some of you may know, breastfed babies in Belgium don't actually get milk from their mothers, they actually get chocolate milk. And there was reading recently that 98.7% of children's blood in Belgium is actually not made of hemoglobin, but made of pure chocolate milk. I wasn't surprised, honestly. In addition to her suspected chocolate addiction, Tina also calls herself a bit of a workaholic and education junkie. So let's hope that we all get our fix tonight, if not of chocolate, at least of other educational illicit substances. I suspect that this session is going to fly very high and it's going to be very interesting. So Tina, at this point, I will invite you to click on your talk button and to jump in, and you can start your presentation anytime you want. Thanks.
Thank you. I do have a chocolate addiction, and funny enough, I probably started when I grew up in Switzerland as a kid for a few years. You can't live over there without getting a chocolate addiction. But it actually, Miss Kit Kat came from a name that my grade ones, even throughout the years, had for me, because I always had a jar of Kit Kats on my table. So when they graduated grade 5, they came and they gave me an award for being Miss Kit Kat. So I went with it for my blog. Crazy ideas. Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. I know for us in Peel it's Education Week and it's a busy time of year, but so excited to share a little bit tonight. Sketchnoting is something that I'm passionate about and definitely has been my learning journey. So I was super excited when we thought we would try something different and do a session around sketchnoting. So like Michelle mentioned, just because we'll be doing something a little different tonight, if you do want to share, and you are on social media, feel free to share with the OTF Sketchnotes hashtag or use OTF_PD as the Twitter handle. And since we're doing sketchnoting, I thought I would sketchnote all our slides. That seemed like a really cool idea at the time, but hopefully it works out for us. So just to give you a sense of what our hopes or plans for tonight are, I've had the great opportunity to do a few sessions now with OTF, and they're always awesome because we get to learn from each other and share our learning journeys and our expertise and brainstorm ideas together. So we did want to push that a little bit more tonight. By giving you some challenges so that you have a chance to actually practice sketchnoting. Because a lot of these tools we can talk about, but till we play with it, it doesn't consolidate as well. And really, with sketchnoting, it is about jumping in and trying it out, and that practice definitely gets us into our own rhythm and our own style as we go along. So tonight we're going to start with some introductions so that we can get to know each other. We're going to go over the basics of sketchnoting. I'll share a bit about my journey of how I got there. And I have not arrived by any means. We'll see if anybody else has their own journeys of what brought them to sketchnoting. We have a couple challenges to work you through some of the basics so that you can get started. And then we want to brainstorm some of the ways we see it working in our practice, whether it's for us as educators or with our students, or even a collaborative piece that we're working on. So, a little bit about me. Can't believe I put a picture this big of me up on the screen. But like Michelle mentioned, I do have a bit of a problem with social media. For all the cool professional stuff, I love sharing on Twitter, and I'm actually at the Connect conference this week, so you probably would see some of those tweets, sharing some of that learning. I always joke with people because I say Twitter is really my professional side, and Facebook is my personal side, and then the Miss Sita on Instagram is really a mashup of everything. And right now I'm working on a 100-day project. So for 100 days I'm trying to make and take that time to pause and reflect. So sketchnoting has actually been one of the things that I've been doing for that. I love to travel. That would be, the picture you see is actually me and two great friends. We went to Paris over March break, so that was fantastic. And anytime I can document that learning, it's amazing. But then my day job is fantastic as well. I get to hang out with teachers and educators from kindergarten to grade 12, along with their friends, and we get to look at how we could innovate in their practice. So anything from exploring sketchnoting to doing a breakout EDU to trying some coding, all along the grades. So I get to play all day. It is truly the coolest job out there. But we want to get to know a little bit about you. So if you could, in the chat box, just tell us a bit about yourself. Tell us what you do. I know we got kind of that map, but you can tell us again which area you're in. And yeah, let's get to know each other. Message boxes are popping up. Thanks for joining us, John. English and Media Studies. Very cool. We looked at how we could use sketchnoting in English in particular, especially as we're working through novels or character explorations. I'm wondering if Kat Mule's work is going to be helpful there. Stephanie, grade 4 in Ottawa. Very cool. Nicola, 4-5 in Ottawa. Larissa, Ginny, Virginia, awesome to have you with us. Thanks for always coming along. Jen, high school science. Awesome. Nice to have you with us, Laura. Math and science. Fantastic. Barb, thanks for joining and always coming along on the weird, crazy adventures. Only Tim is smiling in the photo. We were up on the Eiffel Tower and none of us liked heights. Which I thought I did it because they liked the heights. And then once we got there, we realized we all didn't like heights. So it may have been a moment of panic of how high we were. Kelly, is it Kelly? Keely? Junior Arts, very cool. Fort Francis, wow. Part of Makerspaces this year, very cool. A consultant, Sarah, is that Social Studies and History? SSNH? Emily, awesome. Wow, such a great group. Thanks for joining again tonight, Clara. Laura, are you in Peel then or in Dufferin Peel? English High School from Mississauga. Thanks for joining us, Shazia. And we're going to get you roped into doing these. It definitely was a trip of a lifetime, Barb. Awesome. Kristen, so glad to have you. Sarah. Khosra. Of course, Laura. Sorry. It's always funny with these that you don't get people's last names. Glad to have you with us. This is awesome. So we just want to get to know each other a bit better as we're exploring. So thank you guys for doing the introductions. And as more folks come in, or as you trickle in, or if you're still typing, no worries, just drop that into the chat window. I'll always try to come over and catch up with the chat. The other thing is, as we go along tonight, I'll definitely pause and ask you for questions, but please ask them at any time. So if there's a question you have, or some of you may have experience with sketchnoting and you want to share some of the resources, apps, tools you've looked at, make sure to drop those in as well, because we really want to learn from each other. I'm by no means an expert. I just have started on the journey. Thanks for joining us, Kara. Okay, so the next thing we want, don't apologize, we just got started. So we're just introducing ourselves, and the next question we want to do is kind of look at that, how we feel about sketchnoting. One of the things I find with sketchnoting is when I introduce people to it or I mention it, they're all like, I'm not an artist. And I don't always tell people my secret, but in my family, I was probably never considered the creative one, definitely not the artist. My mom and my brothers are huge musicians and visual folks, but to me, I always thought in pictures. So I would always be that person doodling. I loved mind mapping, so sketchnoting really stood out to me. But before we get started, I really just wanted to see what your feelings are about sketchnoting. So we're kind of using an emoji continuum there, and this was my best attempt at drawing emojis. So from that first one there you see on the top left of, oh my goodness, why are you mentioning sketchnoting? Which probably we don't have a ton of folks there since you're here, to the nervous face, the pensive face there with, that's supposed to be a hand scratching his chin, to the happy, or maybe you're already a super huge sketchnote fan, even if you don't draw them, but you're loving looking at them or using them as a visual text. So what we want you to do is just use that clip art tool you used earlier. So on the toolbar, thank you, just click on your clip art, and then you can put it on the emoji that you feel best represents you. So I see there's definitely one with heart eyes, which is awesome. A lot of people wondering. Awesome. It is a little nerve-wracking when we first get started, for sure, but definitely gets better with time. So a lot of people in that happy or that pensive state. Awesome stuff. Give folks another second or two. For those of you on your mobile devices, just drop a message into the chat box if you don't have that on-screen option. We'd love to hear your thoughts too. I should have done these in a line so we could see that continuum. It's funny how we always put ourselves in that middle of the line, don't we? Cool. All right, so hopefully we can get people away from the cautious and maybe even away from, add some answers so that you can move from that pensive state to the happy face. And we can build our understanding about sketchnotes. Larissa, that is an awesome phrase, wondering nervously. I have to admit, this is a different format for me tonight. We've actually never done the same format just because it's always fun trying something new. So that wondering nervously is kind of how I feel right now too. So hopefully we can, with our challenges, we can move away from that nervous feeling and we can get into feeling a little more comfortable. Awesome. Okay. Our next page is more of an open-ended page, For this one, you can either use the chat box again or use the text feature on the toolbar that you see there. It has an A with some lines. Just click on it and then click on the page. Or again, you can use the chat box. What are you hoping to make sure that we cover tonight? What are you wondering? What questions do you have? Just so we can make sure that as the night goes on, we address all those questions. Some great questions already about apps, and we'll definitely talk about apps a little bit. How can you help your students? Love that as well. How can you use them in English? Yeah, how long does it take to make a decent sketch note? I still struggle with that. And I don't share all my sketch notes, and that's something I have to be better about, because I often share the ones that don't look completely crazy. How to use sketch notes with students? Awesome. Graphic organizers and critical thinking? Cool. Awesome. So one of the apps I use, Larissa, I love using Paper 53, which is the app I created all of these slides with. What's cool with Paper 53 is that it just exports as an image. So once it's an image, I can use it in any other app, or I could drop it into my Google Drive. And what's cool about being able to drop the picture into my Google Drive is I can then put it into a Google slide, I can put it into a Google site, and now we're taking and enhancing other tools that we have available to us. I do really love using a stylus, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So I think that changes, it does really, for me, change the piece that I want to use a mobile device to do it. But we have Google Drawings, which is an awesome tool available to us online as well. Have you tried it? So we are I'm so excited about these because I feel like we're gonna look at a lot of them. The assessment question is fantastic. So if we don't bring it up at our brainstorm at the end, perhaps we can chat about that a little bit. And we are gonna look at an Android app. I don't have an overview of it just because I don't have an Android device, but I'll share the name of one that some colleagues really liked. And we have a little video overview, a little tips and two about Paper 53, just for those that do want to get that little visual walk around. Yeah, Larissa, that's the downside with Google Drawings. You really can't use a stylus. One of the workarounds really is to use your Google Slides. So we often go to Google Drawings, but because it's a full vector program, it's a little harder. Where if I'm just trying to do a collage or do a little sketch, sometimes it's easier just to do it in Google Slides because I have all of those drawing options. I have shapes, I have images, I have the drawing line tool. It's a bit easier to jump in. Now Google Slides on an iPad may give you the drawing tool as well. Okay, fantastic. So hopefully we'll touch on all of these. Definitely when we get to the end, after we do our challenges, we want to actually brainstorm a little bit of how we can see it working in our practice. And I have some ideas and we can talk through that, but we'll make sure that assessment piece comes up. Love that that popped up. Awesome. Okay. So the first thing we thought we'd really address is what are sketch notes? And I think this is one of the hard parts, especially when it comes to technology or digital tools, because a lot of people will have different words for different tools or strategies. And really at its purest, sketch notes are really just rich visual notes. Some people call them visual notes. And then just to make life harder, I found a graphic today that was calling them graphic recordings for when people do them live. But the person that started Sketchnotes, that's the first link that Michelle dropped in. His name is Mike Rowe. He actually defined them as rich visual notes that use words and images to help communicate a message. And I love that because it is a nice, simple definition that we really can attach to, but it allows us for a lot of variation. And that's where you'll see as you go from Sketchnoter to Sketchnoter, as you see them posted online, everybody has their own style and their own approach. So I have my own, feels like I have my own shorthand of images and icons I use. I tend to do a lot of my sketch notes as a way to stay focused because I can be easily distracted. Today I was watching, and Jay Louie from New York Region was doing sketch notes, and he was just taking one sound bite and turning it into this awesome little sketched graphic. And it was just so cool to see how we both used probably the same tool, and we were both listening to the same session, but we can both end up with a different sketch note. It does make our assessment conversations a little more interesting, for sure, as we try to settle on what that common ground is. Now, just to help you out, because there's so many ways to look at sketch notes or what they could represent, I just dropped two links into this page. And remember, you'll get all these links at the end in the resource roundup. One just looks at the different things we could sketch in the classroom. So as we talk about science, a process, or if we talk about a novel and the story arc, the character development, if we're talking about even patterns in grade 2 or 4, how we can sketch that. There's some ideas there for you. And then another colleague did an awesome roundup of just great people that are doing sketch notes, what they are, where you could go get some more information. So we just wanted to make sure you had those resources as you went along. So a little bit about my journey. And it's always funny to see how our own learning is sparked, or how that journey starts. So I was actually at an Apple Institute. It was one of the Apple Leadership Institutes, and we were listening to speakers like Lupin Puntadera and Michael Fullen. And it was just a great conversations, of course, and you're trying to tweet and share. But in the back of the room sat this guy that was actually sketching out everything that was being said. So Brad posted on Instagram this amazing visual recap of the keynote speaker. And it was just this amazing piece where I finally could see that connection. So as a kid, I was always a doodler. Through all of university, if I opened any of my notebooks, I would have doodles along all the sides of my page. And when I went to my iPad, I was trying to use all these different apps. So I would try to take notes in Evernote. I tried to take notes in different places, but I found I was never going back to them. And what I was remembering was more from the auditory experience than really from writing things down. So I was looking for a tool that I could use that would really help me recall information better and just work more from my learning style. So I definitely know that I'm better with visuals. So I checked out his work. He had this amazing little walkthrough video that we'll share at the end. And I thought, okay, why don't I try it out? So at the time, he was using an app called Paper. So Paper is one of 2 apps from a company called 53. You can download the app for free. They do have a pro feature. So unfortunately, some of the features I've gotten used to, I got grandfathered in, so I get them for free. And it really worked for me and my learning style. But that's where in a minute when we talk about tools, there's 100 different tools you can use. And really, it's about the process, not the tool. So I just found one that worked for me, and it kind of helped me out. So as we went from Paper, I started using the sketch notes when I would be going to big conferences, because I really found a lot of times in these meetings you lose focus and you're not focusing on those key ideas. And it really became a tool that I used to, one, help me focus, but also help me self-regulate. So in long meetings when I'm not great at sitting still, I had something to kind of invest my energy in. And to be honest, those first sketch notes looked wonky. Like I was using watercolors and somehow I got like a poop brown color going on. There was no sense of color schemes, no tidiness. it really was an interesting experience. So I was following 53 Paper on Instagram, and I saw this individual that was featured. Her name's Catherine Madden, and she's actually a visual data artist, I think is her official title. So when I stumbled upon her page, my mind was blown with the possibilities of how I could represent information visually. But at the same time, she had this amazing Skillshare course. And I think we've dropped it in, it's probably about halfway through the chat window there you can see. I've dropped, thanks Michelle, we have Kat Mule's Instagram handle if you want to see it, and then her Skillshare course. And she uses different tools, but Paper 53 is what got me in. And in her Skillshare course, she was showing all these really cool features that allowed me to really maximize Paper 53. So I suddenly realized I could copy and paste, and I could cut and zoom in, and the sketchnotes I was creating started actually becoming a way that I could organize my ideas and sort them out. Thanks for joining us, Bernadine. No worries. So really now I use sketchnotes in a lot of different ways. So I've linked a couple examples there if you just want to click around. One of the ways I do definitely to listen and to summarize when I'm sitting in sessions where they're sharing information. The other thing though is I love using them as a way to recap a group's conversation. I think this is a great way to use it in the classroom, and I've actually done it with students. I did it with a grade 5 class when we talked about what we thought coding was. So instead of just writing on the board, being able to have those ideas on the app and moving them around and having that visual that we could anchor with. And then the last thing that we've really been exploring is how to share information through sketchnotes. So for us in Peel, we actually created a new vision document for 21st century modern learning. And we have 6 elements that we want to tackle as a board where we're constantly innovating in those 6 elements. And people, we just had a short paragraph of text, and it was kind of limiting for people to jump off of and see that connection. So we actually ended up creating a sketch note for each of those elements. And it's interesting to see how much they've become a different starting point and have sparked different conversations. And it seems silly because I've had that experience myself. When we look at the beginning of my journey, that's how I got into sketchnotes. But it's interesting to see how using them as that spark really brings a different group of educators in. So I'll pause there for a minute. Do you have any questions? Has anybody else started sketchnoting? Or what brought you to our session today? I know, like Shazia said, we've chatted about it before. She's seen me sketch sometimes in a session. And sometimes that makes you want to do it. Anybody else try Paper 53? I see some folks are typing, so we'll just pause there for a second. Curiosity is a great thing to bring you here. That's awesome, Nicola. Stephanie, that's the hard part too, and I think to me, watching Kat Mule's course when I realized I could cut and copy really changed the game. And maybe what we'll do tonight, and one of the challenges, I'll just give you a little, I'll do that so you can see it right on the screen, just so you can check that out. John, really cool idea. John, have you seen the Noun Project? It's a group that creates these icons. In my presentations, I've been starting to focus more on the icons than really using a lot of words. I feel like I'm going to the visual extreme sometimes, but so cool to see how kids attach to those symbols. And there's a lot of stats right now that are talking about just how much we read visually. I did a session for parents recently, and I was looking for statistics because we were looking at creating visuals, and they said 89% of the information you receive in 2018 is in a visual format. And that just speaks, I think, to me, to the need of providing these tools for students, but also the need for allowing them to communicate through those means. Love that your kids love it, Clara. Oh, someone did an awesome sketch note. Jan, that's amazing. Cool, Karen. Oh, Virginia, I love that you guys took it on together. Sorry, John. Sorry, Clara. Thanks, Clara. The Noun Project. So you can download them with Creative Commons for free. I pay, so I don't even have that underneath. But a great way just to access different visuals. Sometimes when I'm stuck and I'm sketchnoting and I can't think of a picture that will represent the word I want, I'll go look it up. Barb, I don't know why I call you Barbara, sorry. Maybe I should be calling you Barbara. I love that you mentioned bullet journals because I think they're one of those visual note-taking tools, right? Or have the possibility to really become that visual note-taking tool. Larissa, you would love Cat Mule has a couple Skillshare courses. I don't know if she puts it out on her main page, but she definitely has examples on her Instagram account. She actually has a whole Skillshare course, which I'm trying to work through right now, of creating your own visual resume. So I'm trying to play with that a little bit of what can I represent in a visual format. 20 iPads. Those are amazing days, Karen. Yeah, Karen, I feel like sketchnoting too gives you the freedom to rearrange your ideas. It really is like that reflective tool. I think I've only talked about mind mapping and some of Tony Buzan's work. Like I think there's learning through the process of making the sketchnote, and then there's another piece in that organization of the sketchnote. That actually leads us into some of our next pages. Keep dropping your ideas down, folks. We're just going to go on to the next page if that's cool, and keep this conversation going. Love the start. So tool-wise, there are a lot of tools out there, and this is where it can get a little funky. And I think what I love is we did a sketchnoting Twitter chat I want to say a few months ago, but it probably wasn't that long ago, at the beginning of March with our colleagues in Peel. And a lot of colleagues have actually stuck with the analog version. So we don't really need fancy apps to sketchnote. You can sketchnote on paper and pencil. And I put the question out on Twitter, and it was kind of funny because the majority of the group actually preferred to do it on paper. I've never really done it on paper. I usually stick to the digital route. So I do use Paper 53, but there's lots of apps out there. We've asked the Twitterverse out there for you. They have lots of favorites. Procreate was an app that came up a lot. Adobe has an app called Sketchbook Express and Sketchbook, which is great just because it's available on Android and Apple. Another one though, a colleague in the March Twitter chat again, they like the Bamboo app if you're on an Android device. So they found that gave them all of the tools that they were looking for. And then at the last EdTech Team Summit, I was introduced to a new tool. It's not, it wasn't my style, so I actually shared it with a classroom teacher. Hopefully they'll get to try it out, but it's called Rocketbook. So it's paper that you can sketch on, but then it has a tool, a QR code that lets you then turn it into a digital representation, and you have some short forms that will allow you to organize and send it to your Google Drive, and some really cool features that allow you to really blend that analog and that digital world. So if you're more of a paper pencil person but you want to organize and keep track of it, that's where the Rocketbook could be a great tool. Stephanie, I love that you did it on paper with your students. And I think this is the other hard part with sketchnoting, because I feel like some kids would be better on paper and some kids would be better in a digital platform. So really being open to that. The reason I love a digital platform is because I can cut and reorganize. And I think it comes also from the fact that I often do my sketch notes live when I'm listening to someone. so I can't really always be as organized or as structured. I have an awesome friend, Sharon Drummond. You'll see her in the Twitter moment there. That always thinks ahead. So when we do Ignite, she'd have all her boxes organized. Just so inspiring. I'm not there yet. One day. So I find on the digital platform I can organize a bit better. But it was cool just to see when we put it out on Twitter how many people really did love that paper feel or had their go-to pens that they really enjoyed, and really it spoke to their learning style. When we look at the why of sketchnoting, this was another piece that I wanted to put it out on Twitter and just see what people would mention. There's so much research, again, that talks about the power of visuals. I think when we look even at a lot of the research that compares note-taking on paper versus note-taking on a computer, they often compare that typing to the drawing. And using a stylus really allows us to mimic a lot of those experiences we would have on physical paper. So there's so much research just even from that back end. But I thought I would put it out on Twitter again and see why people went to sketchnotes or why they were sketchnoting. And it was kind of cool to just see what people were saying. So a lot of folks like me were talking about using it as a tool to help them focus in sessions. Some folks mentioned using sketchnotes to help them organize ideas, to structure ideas in different ways. It was really cool to see people mention the idea of processing information. And someone, I don't want to say the wrong person, so hopefully I don't, you can check their tweet out again in the Twitter moments. Just a reminder, you don't need to be on Twitter to see those Twitter moments. Just click on it and you'll get the whole collection of folks and their ideas. But somebody said they used it to process, and it was that idea that when you have to take a visual and a word and put them together to represent your ideas, that you're really at a higher level of thinking, right? We're getting into that critical thinking process of how do I take this big concept and represent it in a visual manner. And I think that really talks to that synthesizing information as well. I think to me, when I read people, a few folks on Twitter were mentioning that they use sketchnoting to remember. And that's the one thing that's been really surprising to me, is that I can often go back, and I don't remember a lot of my master's program, but I can go back to some of the sketch notes I have and still remember the picture 4 years later of a great conversation about what makes your soul sing. So I think it's interesting to just see how the process of sketchnoting often helps me retain more information. But I think, again, it's in that synthesizing and that processing that happens as you create a sketchnote that we're really able to hold on to those big ideas that we want to tackle. And something that was interesting, Jen Giffen mentioned that she often sketchnotes to start a dialogue. And I found that too, that when you're sketching at a conference, or if you're sketching during a chat, people always want to know the app and start playing around with it. So it's interesting just to see how the act itself can start a dialogue or a conversation. But then you look at how many of those sketch notes have sparked a conversation like we mentioned earlier. So I think of Sylvia Duckworth's sketch notes that we've seen a lot in education, and how they often become an anchor or third point for our conversation. Is there one of those ideas that really speaks to you? For any of these sketchnoters, the lovers of sketchnoting, is there a reason that we didn't add to the list that you would want to add? Again, just drop it into the chat box. Going back to some of those articles earlier on, they'll give you a bit more of a research base if you're looking for that one. But it was interesting to see the overlap between what the research says and what the collective said on Twitter. It was really cool to see that overlap. Barb, it is funny, right? That we can listen and sketch, but it's hard to type and listen. I find, especially when I'm tweeting out or creating some of those sound bites, you do check out and then you get back into the conversation. But yeah, with sketchnoting, I was doing it today during Matt Miller's The Ditch the Textbook Dude, doing it through his keynotes. And it's funny how I didn't even focus on the slides as much. I was picking up those same big ideas. It was super cool. All right. So it is time for us to try it out. So what we have for you tonight is we have 4 challenges, and they're just going to take you through the basics or some of the basic tools. This isn't a science. I hope it will help us all get our feet wet. So this is definitely a growth mindset stretching moment. We'd love for you to choose a tool. Now again, it's up to you. If you want to grab a stack of Post-it notes and scribble these ideas down, if you want to have a pad of paper close by, if you have a device, whether it's a phone or a tablet and you want to try Paper 53, I'm going to put the Android app title just here in the box, just so if you do have an Android phone, Bamboo would be an alternative, and then there's Adobe's Sketchbook app. So if you want to take a minute and grab, make sure you have one of those tools. We're going to give you 4 different challenges. We're timing it probably about 4 or 5 minutes to do the challenge. I'll talk through a little bit of my strategies. I may show my screen a bit to show a tool or strategy as well. Make sure you post your questions in the chat window so we can really be responsive to what you're hoping to explore, and we'll take it from there. But we'd love for you to take that risk and to share your awesome work with us. We're not, you don't have to, but we're inviting you to. So we just want to take a quick little survey, if that's okay, Michelle. Awesome. So if you want to share your learning on Twitter, oh, sorry, no, email is first. If you want to email to Michelle, he's going to hook us up. You're going to choose the A in the voting. If you prefer to share it on Twitter, just because maybe you have it on your phone, to the OTF Sketchnotes hashtag, just let us know with B. And if you're more panicking right now because you don't want to share just yet, you want to learn and soak it in a little bit more before you start sharing, just let us know with a C. That will just let us choose the format that works best for our group tonight. So we'll give you a minute and then we'll check in again.
There's no obligation, obviously, but these are the 3 options. Actually, there are 2 options for you, and I'm just going to paste in the chat box in a minute my email address. So if you are doing things on paper, you can just take a picture with your iPhone or your smartphone, and you can just send me that picture to my email address, and I will then post these images into the room, into Blackboard. Or you can also post them on Twitter, and then Tina will post them in Blackboard. So you have 2 ways of doing it, but there's no obligation, obviously, no obligation at all.
All right, so it looks like a lot of folks are okay, Stephanie, that's cool. And that's it, there's no obligation, so we're just putting it out there. It looks like people want a bit of everything. So like Michelle said, we will give you the option. He'll put his Twitter handle, his email address. Like I said, if you just use the hashtag on Twitter, OTF Sketchnotes, then we'll be able to share both of our signs, which is great. And you may want to share from one challenge to the next, so it may take you to the end to feel comfortable. I know, Shazia, like I said, those first sketch notes, I can't believe I shared them out there. Some of the color schemes, that was crazy. So no pressure. This is all about us learning tonight and about taking taking that risk and trying it out. Okay, so let's do the first challenge. So our first challenge is one that comes from Michael Rowe. Remember how I said he's kind of the godfather of sketchnoting? And he had this great challenge where he said, everything we draw really can be made with 5 basic elements. A circle, a square, rectangle, however you want to see it, 4-sided polygon, a triangle, a line, and a dot. So your challenge, your first challenge, is what could you create with all or some of those elements? You can repeat them as many times as you want, but what could you draw with those 5 basic elements? You want to try drawing a couple things? Go for it. So you can see my little guy there on the bottom, which is not how I usually draw guys, so I was trying to stretch and model that growth mindset. Is just created there with a little rectangle and some lines and some circles, and he looks like a little person that's excited. So we'd love for you to try it out. So grab your tool, grab your pieces. We're not going to draw right on the page, you are more than welcome to email it to Michelle if you want to share, or tweet it out to OTF Sketchnotes. It just will be really hard to sketch right on the page. As you're sketching, we have a couple resources you can check out. So I made a little tips and two about Paper 53, just if you wanted to get a sense of how the tools work. But generally speaking, when you open your drawing app, you're going to see a toolbox that has a lot of your tools in it. There's often a pen. You're often going to find an eraser. Sometimes you're lucky and you'll have different textures. To be honest, I always go to the calligraphy pen, which is the, Bernadine, you can look for Bamboo or Adobe Sketchbook. I can find you the exact links there if you want. So I usually would go to Adobe Sketchbook just because it's on Android and Apple. But I found a colleague said that she preferred the Bamboo app. So I'm just going to drop that in there for you. Hopefully that gets you in, Bernadine. So she said that was her favorite app when we were doing some sketchnoting challenges. It's all about finding them from the team out there. So yeah, so the sketchbooks apps that are out there, it's kind of interesting to see how many of them overlap. For free, Adobe Sketchbook and Paper are nice apps just because they are free. So when we look at those 20 iPads, Corinne, that you have in your math program, it's a quick app that we can kind of download and get started with. A lot of folks, if you're looking more for yourself and you're really wanting to fine tune, I know a lot of sketchnoters really like Procreate because it has some really awesome brush options. So a lot of the hand letterers use Procreate as well. I'll get the link for that one. And it also does a little recap video as you sketch. So if you're really trying to do it or use it as a tool that captures your thinking over time, it could be a great option for you. There we go. So if Procreate's an app you want to check out. Awesome, Karen. So one of the reasons I do like all of the apps that we mentioned tonight, they all will save to your camera roll. And we want apps that will save to our camera roll because that means we can get the Sketchnote off our device and we can share it in different places. So similar to what we were saying earlier, Larissa, where you can put it into your Google Drive, and then from our Google Drive, we can use it in Google Slides or Google Sites. We're able to use it in those different forums and different places, which really allows us to capture it in different ways. I've even sometimes created a sketch note and then use clips so that I can speak over it so that they have the visual that I've created, but then they have my thoughts behind it. So it's a cool way to app smash those ideas together. Annette, Annette, can you say that again? So what do you want to do? I'm going to switch just to put my iPad up so that you can, I can walk you through. Can you ask the question again? So do you want to take your paper 53 picture and put it into, like, get it as an image? Okay, let me show you. So I'll just put my iPad up on the screen. Can you see my iPad? Awesome. So I'm just going to go to paper 53 here. So when you have your, and I know it may be a little delayed, so hopefully my words match up. When you have your sketch notes, like this page here, you're usually, when you're sketching, you're on the whole page. Let me just go out. So when you're on this whole page, I'm going to pinch to close my notebook. And then on the bottom, you have that little arrow that points up. So when I tap on it, I have the option to say Save Image. And once you save image, it actually becomes a picture in your photos. So you can share it from there. Any other questions you guys have about paper 53? So just while people are sharing, if some folks are still doing their challenge. Hey, Laura, we're going to check it out in a second. Annette, you couldn't see. Sorry, the sharing. I'll do it again just in case. So I'm pinched out of my page, and on the bottom I'm tapping on the share button, which is that line with the arrow pointing up, and then I am going to tap on Save Image. Awesome. Fantastic. Okay, Laura, I'm going to check out your page here. Let's go to Twitter and see what we have. And of course it goes back to home. Sorry guys. Oh, there's our hashtag for tonight. Whoa, check you guys out. I love it. Looks amazing. Wait for you. That is awesome. You're jumping in. All right, Stephanie sent it to Michelle. Love it. Thank you guys. This was the nervous part of the night. I didn't know if people would jump in, so I'm so appreciative. Thank you guys so much. That is awesome. So just a quick tip if you're using paper 53. One of the tips that we were talking about earlier, one thing that made a huge difference for me, oh, sorry, Michelle, is that you can zoom in on your page and you have these little guide dots, which makes writing so much neater. One, zooming in means that when I zoom out, it doesn't look as messy. And two, I have those lines to really help guide me as I'm exploring. All right, we're going to stop the sharing so we can see some more of your handiwork. Stop sharing, and we'll switch back over. All right. Nerve-wracking to anyone? Oh, Shazia. It's a little secret, Shazia. Nobody knows about. But it definitely changes the game when you're trying to do those, a sketch note that you want to share with people. And it's funny to see, like, I think this challenge of the 5, wow, that's amazing. Check you guys out. It's amazing what we can draw with those shapes. No, Bernadine, you can use as many of the shape as you want. So I think this would be a really cool little challenge to bring to kids as an introduction to sketchnoting. If you guys agree, you can give me a little emoji happy face maybe. But a really simple way, and I think it takes it away from that artistic piece. A lot of the conversations we have about sketchnoting is, I definitely think there's kids that are gifted artists. I think of a colleague at Tompkin, Catherine, who makes these stunning sketch notes, and you can really see her passion and her gifting in visual representations come to light. But I think everybody can sketch, and that's why I love those basic elements, because they really speak to the point that we don't all need to be fancy artists. So as we go through tonight, we're actually going to send some just little one-pager tip sheets that can help you as you get going. All right. Oh, we have more. Whoa. You guys are like rocking this. Look at that. Oh my goodness. I'm loving this. This is amazing. Oh, wow. Way to go, Stephanie. All right. So hopefully, you guys, it's looking awesome. We'll add some more to the next page if they keep coming in. But let's go on to challenge number 2. They are awesome, aren't they, Emily? Okay, so challenge number 2. So our first challenge, we've looked at those basic elements. I'm just going to switch over here. I think one of the things that was really a big learning curve for me was finding a way that I could bring the words and the pictures together in one object. So when I was listening to the keynote speaker today, sometimes it's hard just to fit it all in. So sometimes that visual and that word would come together. So what we want you to do for challenge number 2 is think of a word. Maybe it's a word you're learning about right now. How would you create that visually? And maybe it's just a simple writing out your word and trying out some different fonts or trying out writing on your device. And then how would you frame it? So as we get going, I'll switch to my screen so I can show you one of my favorite frames and how I add the words inside. It's not very fancy, but it's one of my go-tos lately. So Michelle was really nice and dropped in a couple sheets just to help you out if you're looking for some ideas. There's a great program right now called Sketch 50, and we'll talk about that under resources. I think they're probably around week 4, almost on week 5, but they have all their resources on their site, so you could jump in. And I loved hearing how a lot of folks were actually doing it with their students, so it was kind of a daily routine they were involved in. So they had some tip sheets, so we've dropped 2 of those in, and another sheet that has some different frame styles that you can tap into. So again, if you want to share your work, send Michelle your work through email and he'll upload them like our last awesomeness, or tweet them out to OTF Sketchnotes and I'll show them on the screen. Nice way of doing waves. Okay, I'm going to do a little screen sharing for those folks that are still looking for some ideas. So we'll switch over again. So one of my go-to frames is actually an iPad. So I use the roller tool on the bottom, kind of looks like a paint roller. And anytime you tap on your colors, you can actually adjust them. So you can get really fancy for all those artists in the group. But I am on black right now, so I'm okay with that. So I'm going to just draw my iPad. And this is why I love the roller tool. Unfortunately, it's one of the tools they took away for the free account. But if you ever downloaded the app before, you probably can update. And then I use another shape on top in white. So it kind of does my screen. I went a little close to the edge there, but we'll let it go. I go to my pen tool and I zoom in so I can put my little home button on there. And then to make it seem a little bit more like a screen, I use my watercolor brush and I just give it a little blue wash there. And then I can put my word inside the frame. I'm going to use my undo button there because I probably should put our hashtag. Now, I'm not great with different fonts. It's something that I want to work on. And I know some sketchnoters have kind of a collection, good that I know, a collection of fonts they go to. Barb, we were all chatting, and I obviously just found out that I can't talk and write at the same time. A lesson there to learn. So as I zoom out, I have my go-to frame. That looks really big right now, but you get the idea. So again, once you finish your word in your frame, drop them on over, share them along if you like, and we will showcase some of those. So Michelle, there are a lot on Twitter. Is it okay if I show some of these on Twitter? From the Twitter feed? And then, okay, let's do that. We'll show some on the Twitter feed here. So I'll go back to my application sharing so you guys can see some of your handiwork. All right. So Barb, I love that you're taking that lesson. Hopefully people can see it on the screen. Love that you're taking that lesson and trying to visualize it. Now Murdoch, using that watercolor tool, it's one of my favorite tools. Still trying to get better at it myself. But it is just, it adds such a cool tone or texture. Oh, writing a biography. Definitely, I can see that. That is awesome. It cut off the title there. What a cool way to kind of visualize and have that visual up for them. Oh, it's awesome. Look at that rocket ship. It's looking awesome. Trying out those different tools. The shape tool definitely gives it that organic feel, which is really cool. So it gives it a texture kind of, which is fun. And we have some more using those shapes. It really is crazy what we can pull off with just a couple basic shapes, isn't it? Love it. This is awesome, guys. All right. So hopefully we're okay for our challenge number 3. And I know we're rushing folks a little bit, but we'll make sure to tweet these out, as well as we'll put the collection into the resource roundup so you can do them later.
I'm just going to post one very quickly.
Okay, cool. Wow, amazing. You guys like rock this. Yeah, Sketchnotes experts over here. Awesome. Okay. All right. So challenge number 3. So one of the things I find when I'm sketching is, especially when you're sketching a live session or ideas, is often we'll get a list of different objects. So with a list, we often talk about a bulleted list, and some people have kind of go-to bullets that they use, or bullets that mean different things for them. So if you wanted to, for today, to make a little bulleted list of what you've done today, feel free to drop that in. And Michelle has dropped a little visual chart if you want to look for some different ideas, or maybe you want to think of the flow of the day, just of that cycle that usually happens, because that's the other piece that we often see in Sketchnotes, is using those arrows as connectors. So this is a chance to try one of the two, and you can do it about anything really. I just thought if you're stuck, you can think about your day and kind of sketch that out. So while we do that, I'll maybe show you the copy feature in paper 53, because it would be really handy in something like this where I'm doing a flow or doing a bulleted list. So I'll switch this over. Sorry, just having a little glitch there. There we go. Just my button was covered. So in paper 53, I'm just going to erase our little frame there. And you guys are awesomely rocking this. Thank you so much for jumping in. And don't worry if you're not sharing tonight. Like I said, those first couple sketch notes I made were pretty funky. Yours are probably even better than what I created that first time. But it's really about getting that practice in and taking that first little step. And it's funny to see how much, with practice, you kind of feel more comfortable about taking that risk. So if I was making a little piece about my day, so I could have my day there. And if I wanted to make a bullet, so maybe I'm making a little arrow. Oops. So I'm going to use my shape tool. So if I do all that work to get my arrow, I don't really want to make an arrow every time. So I have this awesome feature in paper 53 where I can tap on the scissors and I can make a circle and I can move that anywhere I want. So really helpful because I can actually move things and reorganize them, especially when we mentioned earlier that we like to organize our ideas. But the other thing I could do is I can tap on the screen while I'm holding my object and it will paste it down. So I can make several copies of the same object. So I really quickly have my own personalized little bulleted list. So it's one of those little quick tips or strategies that really streamlined my sketchnoting for sure. We'll go back to our Twitter feed just to see what folks have been saying or sharing. See if we have any more here to share. Oh, yeah, we do. Love it. Tape. That looks awesome. I love that she's joining in. That is amazing. And I love your pens. Thanks, Kara. Oh, love it. Look at that with the heart, with the love. Fantastic. I love how you blended them all together. And one of the things you notice with the watercolor, it really works like a watercolor pen. So as you paint, if you keep painting, it will blend together. Once you lift your hand off the page and start again, then it kind of adds another layer. So more if you're exploring an art, I guess, but definitely something to tackle. So Kelly, I'll quickly show you the arrows, and then Michelle, I'll switch it off so that you can share Laura's handiwork. So in paper, one of the ways that I make arrows, I'm just going to zoom in here, I use my shape tool, that little roller, and as long as I don't lift my stylus or my finger off the page, I go over, up, go to the point, go down so it's balanced, go up, and move over and let go. Now, to be honest, sometimes it's just easier for me when I was first getting started to draw it with the general calligraphy pen, and then I would use my watercolor brush to just give it a little wash, and that's how I got started. We were using the scissor tool so that we could cut and then move it around and paste. So I hold and I tap, hold and I tap, hold and I tap. And unfortunately, those are the little things that are different from app to app. They all have different features. So something like Bamboo has a lot of options when you come to your pencil widths and varieties, which I don't really have in Paper 53, but Paper 53 has that duplicating feature. Okay, Michelle, I'm going to stop sharing so that you can share Laura's handiwork. Oh, we have a couple to share. That's awesome. I'm going to click on 5, Michelle, if that's okay, so we can maybe see it. Oh, love it. Check that out. So Shirley, I do like paper by 53, but I feel sometimes it's just because it's the first one that I started with. And I don't know if I'm just, I should say paper by 53. If it's just because it's the one I got started with and I'm familiar with it. I know a lot of people love Procreate, and some people do use Bamboo or Sketchbook. Bamboo primarily was because it's the only one available for Android, so it really opened the possibilities there. So when we go back to the recap, and Michelle will post that and share that with you guys, I polled friends on Twitter, and they all shared their favorite apps. So you can go through and see. It was interesting to see that a lot of folks do still like paper and pencil. But I'm loving that you guys are all jumping in. Illustrative favorite word, coffee, home, love it. Spring, tulips in spring. Isn't that picture? Laura, thank you. No worries, Kara. Thank you so much for joining us. All right. Happy, unhappy coffee. We have a lot of coffee happening. Next year's assignment. Love that spiral that's happening there. Traffic. Yes, and these rainy days. They're awesome. And Shazia, thanks for jumping in and sharing. That's awesome. Okay, Clara, I'll go over how to cut and paste again. All right, folks, just looking at the time, and if you guys can help me out, we have one more challenge. We can do the other challenge, or we can take the time to brainstorm. So if you guys with the emoji could just give us a thumbs up if you want one more challenge, or and I'll show you some tools with Paper 53. And if you really want to brainstorm, maybe we go into a thumbs down, or maybe we can just pull both of them off, and the resources, we won't spend time on the resources. It seems like a lot of folks have a couple questions about Paper 53. So how about we do this? I'll show you a couple tips. I'll lead into challenge 4, and then while we're doing challenge 4, we'll also put the brainstorm page up so that people can jump in where they want to jump in. So I'll show the cut and paste again for you, Clara. Annette, there's actually no icons in Paper 53. I just draw my own. I know it sounds crazy. There are a couple little tricks, so I'll show you that. And you can also draw on top of a picture, like I did for my introduction. So some people will draw on top of a picture and then get rid of the picture. Sylvia has shown that technique before. So a cool strategy there. But I also want to show you how they have the templates, because if you're storyboarding, especially Laura and the other English folks, if you were storyboarding, a great tool for that. But also I think in math concepts or in science concepts where you could kind of annotate your observations. We're going to do that in a couple weeks, going down to the Radray Marsh as a after-school workshop in Peel. Okay, so I'm going to switch to share my page for one last time. And then we will put that brainstorm page up. Okay, so I have Paper 53 here. We're just going to see if I can zoom out. I'm going to just erase this really quick so we can start fresh. So if once I did an infographic in Paper 53, and I didn't want to draw 50 homes. So just to show you how I could do this, so I'm going to zoom in so I can see my dotted paper. Okay, Michelle, awesome. So I have my dotted paper, so I would create my little icon. So I'm doing a home, so I'm going to just use my shape tool, and I'm just going to try to make my little icon here. So like I said, Annette, it's nothing really fancy, unfortunately. But you kind of, as you go along, you kind of see those shapes and get your own short form going. So I have my icon that I want to duplicate. So I want 50, so I want 5 in a row, and then I want to duplicate it. So I'm going to use my scissors on the bottom toolbar, and I'm going to capture my object I want to copy. So I can push tap, tap, tap. So now I have a row of 3, and again I could copy that row, and I could go 1, 2, 3. Now we're using it more for that infographic idea. Think about a great way, I made that house a bit too big, but a great way to visualize data, especially in our math classrooms, finding a way that they could visually represent a statistic. There's a great book out there called If the Village Were 100 People, not the picture book for children, but it's meant for older kids. And they have some amazing graphics that represent statistics around the world that link to a lot of those global issues like education, healthcare, birth and death rates, e-literacy. So really cool that way. Now, if I wanted to, though, if I was doing something like graphing, but also if I'm comparing characters in a story, that's where, again, that shape tool allows me to quickly create a Venn diagram that I could sketch on. Now, one last tip, if I have a page like this that has a Venn diagram that I may use a lot, I know, Shazzy, it's such a pain. They just changed it up on me, which is a bummer. And a lot of those copy-paste tools aren't available in the other apps, which is a bummer. So I'm hoping maybe with time they'll change their ways and they'll bring them back. Sometimes they'll have blitz sales on as well. Larissa, I'll do the copy and paste one more time. John, so they got clever. So what they do with the Pro version is it's a monthly cost. So I haven't even upgraded to the Pro version yet. I'm trying to debate if it's worth it. That's something I need to tackle. So just look, in the interest of time, just one more time, Larissa, if you circle, you have to hold the page when it circles. So hold your object, and once you're ready, tap on the screen. And then you should be able to move it and tap on the screen again. And don't worry if you don't remember these tools. Like Shazia said, it's a bit of a bummer they're not in the free version anymore. But they're also on that Cat Mules, Catherine Madden's page. So Shirley, you can't add voice. I'm going to stop sharing for you, Michelle, and then take more questions. So we'll stop sharing there and switch back. So Shirley, you can't add voice to paper 53. It's just pictures. Like some other folks mentioned, you could use something like Show Me for sure, and do the sketch note while they're talking. Wow, you guys are like rocking. But then you can also bring it in, because it's a picture, you could bring it into any of your voice apps. So right now, I am a big Apple fan. I have a lot of Apple products. So for me, I use Clips, which is a great app. But you could even drop it into Puppet EDU, which is a free app we have on a lot of our iPads. We could put it into iMovie. We could put it into Flipgrid. Not into Flipgrid unless it's a video. We could put it on Padlet and type our answers in, or even drop it into our Google Classroom. But yeah, it doesn't have that voice feature, unfortunately. Sorry. Any other questions that you guys have? Ideas you're seeing for your classroom? I know our time is quickly coming to an end. The fourth challenge, John, sorry. The fourth challenge was to, sorry, I'm going to just bring it up on the screen, was to create a chart or a graph. So you can see an example there on the bottom of my Coca-Cola intake, which is probably not the best thing to sketch. but I couldn't find it for today. There's this great artist that she would create a little doodle every day that would really, in a graph, would represent something really interesting. She did that one about your comfort zone being outside the one Venn diagram. So for me, our first challenge was really just looking at how we could take information and put it into a graph. So for me, it was my alertness is directly related to the number of Coca-Colas I consume in a day. So feel free, like I know our time's coming to an end, but if you want to keep doing that first challenge and want to share it, or if you would like to tweet it out to us later, even this week, we'll put all those pieces together in a little collection. So Pam, this is definitely archived. I also created a tips and two that will just give you a quick overview of paper 53, but the session is being archived for you for later on. Stephanie, I'm loving that you're loving it. That's awesome. So we'll just check out these other ones that you guys had. Love this. Check that out. Plan, teach, learn, test. And I'll have to check that site out, John. That sounds awesome. Look at that. Amazing. Love the little musical notes there. And the cool design. Getting into a lot of tessellations. Very cool. Pam, if I'm not mistaken, and Michelle can correct us, I think you get an email that has the resources and has the recording. Hopefully I'm right. Yes, awesome. I didn't make that up. So maybe just when we do a lot of these things, it's always a bit of a mad dash and a lot of ideas. So what's one way you think you could use sketchnoting in the next, let's even give ourselves 2-3 weeks. So what could you sketch in the next 2-3 weeks? It could be something you want to do for fun, or something you want to try with your students, or something you want your students to try. So either use the text option and type right on our page, or drop it into the text box, and can't wait to see what your ideas are going to be. All right, sorry, my talk button just disappeared for a second. So sorry. Coming back to our assessment conversation while people are typing ideas in. Shazia, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, no problem.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, my talk button did something funny. I've never had that happen. So one of the things when we talked about that assessment piece, as we were going through tonight, I remembered a session we did last year with Catherine, who I was mentioning from Tompkin, and she wanted to give her students the option of either using Mindomo or using a sketchnote to capture a moment in history that they were reflecting on and consolidating. So what was really cool was we looked at creating success criteria that really focused on the concepts that they were going to be had to include in the sketchnote. So it allowed us to use different tools. So they had Mindomo as another visual tool, but that was maybe a bit easier for some friends to jump into. But I think that success criteria is kind of vital. But to your point, Shirley, I feel like that audio or that conferencing allows us to better understand their thinking, for sure. It's kind of like when we use graphic organizers. It's that conversation that really gives us a chance to analyze their thinking a little bit more. Barb, I love that idea of giving them the option to sketchnote while you're giving them a lecture, so they have, yeah, just interested in traditional notes. It was actually one of the reasons I suggested this session was I was hanging out with my nephew, and he was studying for a test. He's in grade 9 this year. And it was interesting, as we were talking, we started sketching out ideas of what electricity meant. And for him, it just clicked. And as a visual learner and as a doodler, for him, he could see how he could remember more that way. So it just gave him a chance to take notes differently. So Annette, in the roundup, and I'm going to show you also the Sketch 50. There's a lot of examples of what folks are doing in Doodle-A-Day and Sketch 50 with their classes. So hopefully that will give you a couple examples there. Also, Colleen Hartman, I hope I put hers in the Twitter moment. If not, I'll add it in. And Sandeep, we did a Twitter challenge with similar challenges to what we did tonight. They've both been sketchnoting with their classes over the last month and a half. The kids love it. So their examples, I think I tried to drop some of those in. And Katie underneath, she's been doing the Sketch 50 project with her kids. So those are all elementary examples you can kind of tap into. Ooh, cool, Shirley. I like that for the T-charts. Actually, Shirley, we have another one coming up in a couple weeks. We're going to be doing on curation. So how we can curate, how students can curate, how we can curate together. So if you're interested, I think it's May 12th, so Wednesday night. I'm just going to go back to brainstorming just so we can see, and then we'll come look at that awesome example. Oh, professional reading or professional development. I had never thought of that, but somebody mentioned that they sketchnote the books they read. Pam said that. I don't know if she's still on. So what a great idea. I haven't done that before. I've sketchnoted TED Talks as a visual way to kind of recap them. Create a graphic novel with students. Very cool. And in paper 53, I didn't get a chance to show you that, sorry. They do have a template section. That's in the tips for two I showed you there. So you can actually do a storyboard option. So you get those little boxes that they can kind of start sketching in. Money and Canadian symbols, awesome, in French, fantastic. And that's the cool part about sketchnoting, right? We're not limited to the languages we use. So even if you're doing something dual language based. And we talked to some ELD teachers about using it, especially with the graphic novels and the comics. Figurative imagery, love that. Yeah, the storyboard's great for planning out their stories, graphic stories, films. We're even trying to sketch out an animation, and I used it the other day. Cool. The stylus definitely helps. So I use the stylus that comes with, it doesn't come with, I had to pay a lot of money for it, the one that paper 53 makes. So it's called Pencil, the irony of paper and pencil. But I was using Book Reader last week with some grade 4s, and one of the kids just started drawing his own illustrations. So I just had some Dollarama styluses, and he was using that to help him draw. And it was funny because I think 4 or 5 kids drew their pictures because they saw him draw, which was really cool to see. So in the last minute we have left, I'm sorry guys, just some resources to help you out. A couple things to check out. So last year, a bunch of us did Doodle-A-Day. Doodle-A-Day was just a challenge that Rowan Lee put out. Rowan's sketch notes are amazing as well. And he sketches some of his family pieces, a great person to check out for all of those folks that are teaching English, because I think it could be a cool way to tie into that graphic novel piece. So his Doodle-A-Day was last year. When you check out the hashtag, just be careful because other people use Doodle-A-Day, so there's some interesting stuff there. But educators this year across the world are using a hashtag called Sketch50. So we'll drop this stuff into, oh, it's already dropped in there. So ahead of me. So the website is there if you want to check it out. They have tip sheets, they have challenges. So if you want to get started or you want your kids to get started, a great place to check out. And if you want to keep practicing over the next little bit, share with the hashtag and they'd love to connect. And Katie, I put Katie's link in again because she's doing the Sketch 50 with her kids. So just a cool way of being in that co-learner stance. Brad's clip that got me started in Sketchnotes is there. There's also a great educator that has a whole site that talks about going from the verbal to the visual. So he has some sketchnoting challenge cards for you. And of course, a lot of us have seen Sylvia's work. So if you check out her website, she has some different things coming up. So many pieces, and we're so out of time. Thank you guys so much for joining. Thanks for trying something really crazy with me. I hope you share how it's going any way you like. Connect anytime. It really is just more of that personal passion, but it's fun to see when it gets to when you get to share it and get to bounce ideas off of colleagues. And yeah, if you want to join us for curation in a couple weeks, we'd love to have you join us. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks so much, Tina. It was really a fantastic presentation, really fantastic. As Stephanie said, it was so much fun. I think most participants really enjoyed it, and the feedback at the end is really great. I really loved how you made use of technology and how you encouraged participation. It was really one of the most exciting sessions we've had in a long time. So it was really a lot of fun to see all the sketches and all the images. You know, it was a session of a really high level of skill and creativity, and lots of extremely useful ideas and tips, really very concrete. And that's what we love to have on OTF Connects. So thanks so much for sharing your enthusiasm with us and your passion with us. And as always, I also want to thank all of you for being such incredibly motivated and creative participants, and you're all awesome teachers, and as I've noted tonight, you're also fantastic artists. So Tina has prepared a lot of links for all of you, and we will send them all tomorrow morning by email along with the recording of the session. And I just need a few more minutes of your attention. I'm going to be very quick. Just want to, oh, sorry, that's the wrong slide. I just want to mention to you that we have lots of great upcoming session in the month of May. And one of them that I just want to point out is this one here at the bottom. I mean, we have like 20 sessions in May, so obviously I cannot tell you about all of them. But this one for Stephanie and for those of you who are French-speaking or French teacher, it's going to be one of our very few sessions in French. It's a session by Jeanne Rochon on May 8th. So if you speak French, or if you know French teachers that may be interested, feel free to invite them. That would be really, really great. As you know, there's a subsidy that is offered by OTF and the Ministry of Education. So if you are a qualified teacher and you have completed an additional qualification course in mathematics, technology, or kindergarten, you are eligible for a $450 subsidy. And I'm going to quickly paste that link for you in the chat box in case you want to apply for that subsidy. And I'm also going to paste in the chat box the link to our calendar if you want to explore our upcoming sessions. As we usually say at the end of our sessions, we really value your feedback. I'm sure it's going to be extremely positive tonight. When you quit Blackboard, you will be redirected to a feedback questionnaire. It only takes a few minutes, so if you could do it tonight, that would be great. And then after the feedback questionnaire, you should be redirected to another page where you can enter your name, and you will then receive an email with a certificate of participation that you can add to your professional resume. And so that's it. That ends our tonight's session. I just want to thank you all very, very much for your participation and for all your drawings. It was really a lot of fun, and I hope to see you soon again. We hope to see you soon again on OTF Connects. Thank you very much, et merci beaucoup. À très bientôt sur OTF Connects. Oh, une seconde.